Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe. Java.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, we got good audio this morning. Last week I was struggling when we had our guests come in. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to first of all confess this morning I am not 100%. This was a very interesting weekend from a health perspective for a brother. When your body gives you hints to rest and you don't, it will make you rest. And so I had no choice this weekend. I'm about 80% back. And so if you hear it in my voice or whatever, before you all start commenting on it, that is why. We are in a very interesting time in our country, in our state, in the world. Since about July or August, I have mentioned when we talked about Black men's mental health, when we've talked about mental health, this concern and feeling that I've had that the holidays are going to be very interesting this year. I thought it was the tariffs. I thought it was the increase in food. And we are at the cusp of a lot of people not being able to purchase food. We had this episode planned before what has hit the news about SNAP food stamps. A lot of people are on food stamps. Let's just clarify, there are more people that are lighter than me on SNAP benefits than those that have my level of melanin and more. But there is an impact away from this. We were going to talk about the holidays. This is a time of year that is very interesting for many, and especially since COVID. And so last week we had the opportunity to speak with Coach La. She is back this week, and I'm excited to have her back here with us. And so we're getting ready to bring her in. And today we're going to talk about the holiday blues and depression. Some of us just function. We'll get through it. We'll cook, we'll shop, do what we need to do. And all along, we are on a fine line between just the blues and actually being depressed and may need to seriously talk to someone. And so one of the things that we've been saying for the past 5 years, it's okay not to be okay. But we learned last week that when that not being okay begins to impact your everyday function, that's an issue. And so we're going to talk about that fine line. We're going to talk about how we as Black folks handle, depression and the taboo about treatment. We have a sister here today that knows her stuff. I mean, clinically, she gets it. But because she's a sister and from our community, she's able to take life experience, knowing the culture. She's a cultured clinician. I don't know if anyone has ever introduced her with that title, but I'll take the privilege of maybe being the first this morning. Coach La, you're a cultured clinician. You gave me some energy. I just got some energy from somewhere. Maybe the caffeine kicked in, which I'm not supposed to be drinking. But good morning to you. Good morning to you. I see your hints of red. You got the red lip. You got the red lid. And come on. I see it. I see it.
I have to give you my patronage to you and your bread. It's one of my brother's favorite colors too. So I said, what am I going to do? I wore a red jacket last time. I said, how am I outdo myself again?
So you did it. The lip and the lid is popping.
Yeah, get the red lippy. This is my favorite. But thank you for having me back. Shout out to all of the Java with Jimmy and the cafe folks that y'all are in here. Hope y'all got your Java ready. Today I'm on my D&D, so I had time today to grab it. So hopefully this delay's not too bad.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Right.
I got my caffeine here. I'm not really supposed to be having it right now, but I'm doing everything else I'm supposed to do. So but last week we were honored to have you here. There were a few things that I learned, and one of the major things that stood out was the difference between emotions and feelings. Like that was paramount for me because, and I didn't put the clip up yet because I used the wrong word. I said, well, they're anonymous. I used to think they were synonymous. They were feelings and emotions were the same thing. And so in that context, we learned so much, but there, I believe, if I'm right, there is an emotion of fear, anxiety, some depression, some anger maybe, that people are feeling going into the holidays and with this coach. You serve people, you're in the community, you know what's going on with SNAP. And so
Yeah.
I think there's an extra level today that I feel that we have to just level set for our community, embrace ourselves, be real, but then also talk about the tips and tricks and tools that we can use to address the holiday blues and depression. And so if you all weren't here last week, I'm not going to have Coach Law go through her bio and her life story again. Go back and watch last week's. But if you could say hello again to the audience, and then Coach, if you don't mind, maybe we start the conversation again. We talked about it a little bit last week, but there's the blues, and then there's
Yeah.
depression. And we talked about the difference of not being okay. When not being okay is not okay is when your daily function may be influenced. So the floor is
Yeah.
yours with all of that wonderful context I just gave.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for having me back. Some of you probably know already I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker. So, what does that mean? They refer to it as an LICSW. That means I have had clinical training to allow me to operate independently of being supervised. However, that doesn't mean I don't have counsel and I don't have peers and that I don't govern myself with a high level of integrity and I'm out here just running rogue. So, speaking to what Job is talking about, the difference between having the blues is a negative emotion, right? And we all have negative emotions. We're not always happy. And I think that's the thing is that most times what you'll have people say is, I'm not happy. I'm feeling down. Life is lifing. And, contrary to popular belief, you're not always going to be in a good mood. But that doesn't mean you have a mental health disorder because you're having a bad day, a bad week, a bad moment. It's when you start to feel heavy and you say things like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to get out of bed, right? And no matter how much you are sort of trying to push yourself, it's just gets increasingly more difficult to do basic things. You don't want to shower, you don't want to eat, you're sleeping all day. Your functioning is so different than what you would normally do. And it has to be persistent for at least 2 weeks. And I think that's a lot of what people don't understand is that it's about the intensity and the duration that makes it be a depressive episode, right? Like, and people can have those and not necessarily get diagnosed with depression. Let me explain. Someone passes away, right? You lose a job. Like if you can like trace it to a particular circumstance or an external factor, that's often enough receipts and evidence. I think when you find that every single time something is happening, this is happening every week, you're feeling depressed and it's about little things, or you can't really pinpoint a reason, and it lasts for 2 weeks. And despite your external circumstances, things overall in your life are really good, but this is happening a lot. Like you just can't get out of bed and your functioning changes. You probably should seek out some support and see if you have something else going on besides the blues. I think where it becomes challenging for people of color, there's persistent stress, trauma, drama, and things that we're dealing with externally on a regular basis that it's very difficult to distinguish between, is this just the blues? Is this depression? Because life is lifing so hard all the time. That it just becomes a lot more challenging. And so if you go to a therapist that doesn't understand the culture, they may quickly just say, well, you're going through a lot of hard things and you're doing really well. You're getting up, you're going to work. So they may miss the signs that no, this isn't just because I'm struggling with my finances. I've noticed this since I was a teenager, or this has been ongoing and just no one really gave me any support because life is always lifing, because my external circumstances are so extreme. People just chalk it up that life is lifing and they totally miss that you have depression. I think that's what's challenging for us.
The challenging part is knowing the difference. I think the challenging part is that we did not but know the difference. And so what we want to do right now is one, and usually, Coach, I do this with medical providers, but I want to say as a disclaimer, Coach Law is giving general advice. She has not examined you. She has not sat with you. And so this is general information. The 2 week
Right.
period to which she refers is sort of an industry, a field sort of standard. We talked a little bit about the DSM. Where they at
Yes.
now? 5. The DSM,
Yeah,
where they at?
and this is a
DSM 5.
parameter to look at, right? Like when you talk or you're just kind of thinking about yourself or a family member, is, you know, tracking how long things last. I think in general, when you go to a medical provider, they always ask you that, right? Like, well, how long have you been dealing with this? No matter what it is, right? When did you notice it? Have you noticed that it's gotten worse or better? You know, well, what's made it feel better? What has made it feel worse? So these are just standard assessment questions that they ask, be it a physical problem or a mental health problem.
When you mentioned the word assessment, Coach, I wanted to ask, is it worth for a few seconds maybe talking about some level of self-assessment for people that maybe journal and notice that, Monday through Thursday, I was, I didn't feel like getting out of bed for one day, but I made it for two. And then Friday, such and such happened. Is there self-assessment that we can do as well? We got a little bit of delay with the coach, but trust me, what she's going to drop is be well worth waiting. Come on, Coach.
Yeah, I think this goes back to understanding and self-awareness of how you so yes, and I'm sorry guys. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it was an iPhone update or what, but it's all quirky. All kinds of stuff is happening with technology today. But yes, you can do a self-assessment, right? And it's really about self-awareness and knowing we still lagging a
A
little
little
bit.
bit. Why don't you log out and then log back in, because I want
Yeah,
people to get the I don't
I
care about
see
the
it.
tech.
I see it
I want them
lagging
to get the
too.
information. Okay.
I'm so
Log back
sorry,
out and log back in. You
guys.
don't
This
have to
is
apologize.
awful. Last week it was Jimmy. This week it's me.
Look at the devil. Log out and
But
log back
yes,
in.
you can do a self-assessment, and it's important to be able to understand.
Okay. She's going to log back in 2 seconds. We had a little bit of delay, but if you're just joining us, we're talking about the difference between the holiday blues and depression. And one of the main things, and Coach mentioned this last week, was that if you notice that you're not being okay, is going on for like a 2 week period, and for those 2 weeks you're not doing your normal functions like showering, being around people in your group chat and things like that, it's something to pay attention to. So one of the things that we're getting ready to chat with her about when she returns is self-assessment. Self-awareness of where you are mentally is something that you can do to know when to reach out, to maybe reach out to a family member and say, hey, for the past 2 weeks I have not been okay. Would you mind coming over? In the most extreme, at any time, there is a resource, and we always want to share resources. If you feel that you need to talk to someone, there is the number 988. 988 is known as the suicide, I believe, prevention hotline. However, that number is also used for those that just may need to talk to someone. So we have Coach Law back. So, Coach,
Hey,
we got you back. Listen, that's all that counts.
yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna go ahead and do it from my phone.
yes, ma'am. So we
Yes,
were going to talk about self-assessment.
yes. So that's what
How
I was
can you,
talking about.
yes, go ahead. Self-assessment.
So what I was saying is yes, you can have your own self-assessment. And I think that goes back to the self-awareness of understanding how you typically um, manage stress and knowing when, okay, normally, you know what, I can go take my walk, I play my music, and I do all of these things, but this isn't helping. Um, it actually seems to be getting worse. So I think that, and you look at how many days. So normally, say it takes you 5 days, you need, like a week to sort of recover. and you're at your seventh day and you're like, yeah, so I still feel really bad. I got ruminating thoughts. I still don't want to get out of bed. I haven't eaten. Like you start to like see these things, and it can be kind of difficult sometimes if you've never experienced it before. But what I find is a lot of my clients, once they start coming to therapy, they start understanding their own triggers. Like some people know that once the winter months come, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. They naturally start talking about, I get moody around this time. So how do we actually start to create a plan when you already know that those are some of your challenges?
Coach, when you talk about creating a plan, one of the things that I mentioned this morning was that um, with the updates around Snap, let's just jump right in and be real. What is it that we can do mentally? I've been saying this for months that these next, in the next 3 weeks is going to be interesting. And I also know we discovered from you last week that you had the ability to speak to the relationship between money, budgeting, and also, I had this one segment, and maybe we'll bring you back for that, called Black Mental Wealth, because there is definitely a thing there. So when you talk about planning, we talked about self-assessment, and I'm going off the cuff a little bit here because I want to make sure that people get these tips and tricks. What are some things that you would suggest that people do now to get ready to just, and it's not all doom and gloom, but Coach, I can't let the feeling go. And now we see what's going on. So go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think you touched on a couple of things. One, we talked about last Monday, identifying the emotion and understanding how you're feeling. So the emotion and how you're feeling. So maybe the initial emotion you had was anger, or maybe it was surprise, or maybe you're disgusted. Um, Now, how do you feel about that? You could be, hurt. You could start to feel anxious. You could start to feel worried. You could be overwhelmed. So all of those type of things sort of let you know, okay, what do you need to do for yourself to sort of regroup, right? Because we often cannot think when we are emotionally charged. Your frontal lobe and everything shuts down. Your defense mechanisms kick in because you don't feel safe. So now you can go into fight or flight mode, right? So you could start wanting to fight. I've seen some videos of people crashing out, saying they're going to go in the grocery store and they're going to start looting. I've heard seen all kinds of reactions, which are emotional responses. So I'm giving people grace that when they heard this, and that emotion of anger came out, subsequently you have people online saying they're going to do certain things. I'm hoping that there's good people around them just to say, okay, let's take a minute and let's breathe, and let's think about one, do some checks. Where you in terms of your food equity, in terms of what you already have on hand, right? Where is it really that okay if you don't get, food stamps for November, that you're going to starve and you're going to go hungry? First of all, you want to assess and make sure you're not jumping out the window. So a lot of people have cupboards, deep freezers, and they have a lot of food equity, right? Some people do. If that is not your case, then that's when we start thinking about what other resources are there. I would start with looking at your budget. My family used to call it husk. Hope I'm saying this right. My grandmother would call it husk time, where you almost had to go into guerrilla budgeting. So a lot of the extra things that you absolutely don't need, subscriptions, things that don't add value to your livelihood, but it's more of a lifestyle thing, you might want to start cutting back on those things, right? Like, starting to look at that and starting cutting the fat, as they would call it, in your budget. You're only doing the bare essentials. And this is not going to last forever, but what happens is emotional response to feeling as if something's being taken away from you. And then you can go into, like I said, that crash out. And like all my people of color out there, y'all know what I mean by crash. Now you're mad, you want your get back. You feel like someone has disrespected you or harmed you in some type of way. This is the hardest part of all of this, right? Is because whose responsibility is it to make sure that people are fed, clothed, and housed? Those of us that are empath, those of us that care about the community are easily going to say we should look out for one another. But there are, unfortunately, some other people who feel like it's not their responsibility. And so we're very torn as a nation in terms of responsibility, obligation. And I think that is really at the source of all of this is whose responsibility? And if I choose not to, am I to be strong armed, bullied, or robbed because I don't want to share in some ways, right? And so then we go into all of the other reasons why we should, right? Because there's racism and there's discrimination and there's not a level playing field. So it's just the right thing to do. But not everybody's in agreement about this, and it makes it really challenging. And that's why I feel like the government is in this gridlock, right? Granted, I'm not a fan of Trump, but everything that he's saying is not completely wrong, right? Like there's always multiple sides of looking at things and multiple perspectives. We do need to do a better job of how we're allocating resources. Not everyone is doing it in an equitable way or an efficient way. And we do need to have checks and balances. And how do you get a handle of that? You have to kind of pause and reset and evaluate and do an audit. And there's disruptions when you're doing these things, right? So what do we do, right? And so I've seen a lot of communities coming together and doing food pantries, which, let's be fair, this stuff was already here before there was this threat of no SNAP benefits. Communities have had soup kitchens, food pantries. Many churches have had this going on way before this has happened. So the part of it too is there can be, I think, for some people, more shame around going to a soup kitchen or a food pantry versus having your SNAP card and going into a grocery store. So that might be also some barriers of people just, the shame of having to go and do that may not be what some people are comfortable with doing. Some people are not comfortable with asking their family for help or even letting anyone know that they're having issues with getting food. So I think we're not just dealing with, okay, SNAP benefits, but also everything that comes with that to be able to say, hey, if these benefits don't come through, I'm not going to be able to eat. Can you help me? And that's a hard one for a lot of people, is asking for help.
That has such a mental health impact, especially, and I go, coach, right to men there when I've been naming, from things, and I'm going to say the P word, pride, and there's healthy pride, and then having too much pride, and then their position or perspective or persona that they may have and may need. There may be spouses and partners that want to go and ask for help and got to honor whatever, and then the other partners like, no, and I'm giving a male influence voice, but it could be vice versa as well. One of the things that you talked about is and I've talked about often the tiers of influence on our mental health. There is our first tier, our individual, what we deal with day to day, our own maintenance of mental wellness, and then our own addressing our mental illness. Then there's the sub peripheral, that is things in the community. In the community, in our family, in our circle that impact our mental health. We hear about someone, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We hear about someone that's dealing with that has an impact. Then there's what I call the third tier, which you refer to as the world, where there may be some things where we see on the news, and I'm going to places here. How do we maintain our circle of influence in two ways? Influence on us, and how do we maintain that influence in helping? Some months ago, I spoke with someone that talked about they stopped saying, if you need anything, let me know. And that person walks away with, you said anything. So then now when I call you and I got an any and you can't, and so even for us, we have to be realistic about what we can offer. So influence circle, social media, the news and whatnot. And then how do we influence in these times realistically while maintaining ourselves for the sustained long run?
I think, this is very layered, and I think it's is triggering for a lot of people. If you've ever had food inequity yourself, right? If you've ever, I've had SNAP benefits as a college student. I've had SNAP benefits as a single mom, right? And I remember having to go into um, the what do they call it now? The
The
transitional and
office,
assistance
the
office,
office.
right?
We used to call
Back
it
in
the
the day,
welfare office.
we called it the welfare office. Trying to think of the new technical name, right? The transitional assistance families or something like that. It's long, but back in the day, it was just the welfare office, right? And I remember women in my family saying, you got to stop having so much pride, right? If you need the help, you need to go get the help. If you and your baby need to eat, you need to, do what you need to do. So I'm just thinking about all of those things that, sort of come up for me and came up for me having to go in that office. So some of the things that they've done to take some of that away is you can do it online. You could mail in your application. Like they did a lot of things to sort of allow people to have their pride or their dignity, if you want to call it. But I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and for some of us, serving and giving, right, feeds our own spirit and our own soul, right? There's a lot of people in the world that volunteering and doing those things are so true to their character and who they are as a person. And they can't fathom that there's somebody else out there that doesn't feel the same way. So I think when we think about how we can help, is that there's a lot of finger pointing, there's a lot of energy. When I look on social media, I have paused, taken deep breaths, because like, do I want to step my toe into this particular debate? How can I be helpful to the narrative? What can I do that will bring us closer together? And then what could I do that would actually throw gasoline on an already just a explosive fire that's already going on? So I think some of that for us as influencers is how are we contributing to bringing us together and problem solving versus doom strolling, right? And adding to the panic, adding to people's already feelings of anxiety and anger. I guess that's where I'm at, right? Like I see a lot of these things, and I truly believe people are not trying to do harm, but we know that there are people that are on social media that are not necessarily um, possessing the same type of cognitive abilities to sort through and sift through all of the content and all of the data that's being perpetuated at them. And so that is what I think we can do in terms of influencing is I try my best to just not engage in certain dialogues and conversations. Is not because I don't have an opinion. It's just that I know that the way that the world is constructed, most things will be taken out of context. Even this particular narrative of what I'm saying could be taken out of context, but I own what I'm sharing when I share it, either way, because I know either way it can go either way. But there are some occasions that I don't want to have that potentially be that I could do more harm. So recently I was listening to Gucci Mane's new book. He has out episodes. And he was reflecting, for those who haven't read it, it's a great read. And as a clinician, I'm always interested in hearing about how people experience their mental health condition from their own perspective and in their own words. And he was talking about how he influenced the drug culture, right? And influenced that it was cool to be high and to pop Molly and to, take pills and all this type of stuff. So sometimes we don't realize the harm that we do. And of course, it's free speech and we can say what we want to say, and people can say they're not role models and they have, they don't care. But I think to answer your question, it's each and one of us have to really think about how we're contributing to the betterment of our nation and our world. And I think that's part of the problem is that often that's not what people are doing. They're very selfish and self-centered, and they really only care about their bandwidth and their understanding, their linear understanding of the world. Um, and I still don't have a good answer for that, Jimmy.
I
I
think
don't
it. I,
have a good solution for how we can make that better. But I think that if you're looking for a strategy, is how are you contributing to making things better?
and
And
that
how
is
are
not
you,
just. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
and, or how are you contributing to making it worse and owning your role in it?
I want us to be able to end on a good note, and I almost went somewhere there, and we're going to review everything you said. But one of the things that you talked about is the contribution, and one of the things that I believe that you will agree with in this, our purpose and our priority of Black joy, and we know that Black aren't the only that contribute that benefit from Black joy, but we're going to focus on Black joy. That our Black joy has to be a focal point, one in where we are now, but it's also a reference point, Coach Law. And I don't know, through your research, either clinically or just being a Black woman, I want you to talk, if you don't mind, a little bit about um, we as a people. We often talk about the trauma in our DNA and ancestral, and we hear about it a little bit, but there's victory, there's championing, there is overcoming, there is taking the scraps, and though it wasn't the healthiest, and still making sustenance for ourselves to be able to eat. As the cultured clinician, with all that's going on, yes, that is that I love that for you. Because, and I just want to say to the audience, if you watched Coach while she was talking here, there were certain points where she was giving her perspective, and then if you saw the exhale, this isn't just verbatim for her. She knows and feels and has lived and is living everything that we're talking about today. So Black joy from an ancestral, we may have not been here in time before, but we've been here before. What are your thoughts there?
Hit a nerve. You hit a nerve because that's an ongoing narrative of how can we celebrate. Some of these reels that have been going on is like the world is burning up and Black folks is out here line dancing. I think that's such a strength that we've had. And I'm not saying that there still wasn't revolts. I mean, think about Amistad, right? Right. There are some times where we're like, you know what? We over this and we about to fight and we all gonna just die together. If that's what we gonna do. Like, but there's also been, we gonna sing through this, right? We're gonna hold hands, we're gonna hug. There's the eye contact. Like, we have been through so many things where we had to find a way to reframe it and to thrive in it. So I don't want to keep saying we survived, because if you think about where we are now, and I get it, the world is not better. So all my brothers and sisters that's coming for me, like she sound like she's talking about we've arrived. I'm not saying we've arrived, but I do think that we have to pay homage to our ancestors who had and did die and did fight so that we could have what we have right now. And if there's not a moment of us celebrating that they didn't just die in vain. Yes, we still got work to do, but to completely throw it out the window and say, and not see that we've made progress, I think is unfair to our ancestors. I am my ancestors' wildest dream, right? And to not acknowledge that there is some sister out there, there's somebody in my bloodline that only imagined that a Black female clinician would be licensed with her own practice, sitting in her office, doing an interview with Java with Jimmy on his own platform. Like, that at some point was somebody's wildest dream for us. And so if we can't celebrate where we've come from and where we are, like, what's the point? Like, I get that everything is not perfect. I get that we still got more work to do, but I don't think that we ever really, I don't want to use ever. Let me correct myself. I think that we need to more often talk about our strengths and what we've been able to accomplish so that we can give people help people have hope and optimism about the future. If all we do is gloom and doom, how do we expect people to feel like there's a possibility, there's opportunity, and that it's worth it? Like, and I think that's what we're missing. Like, if we don't talk about that, we've come from way back there. I mean, like literally, we was in negative, we was in a deficit, and that yes, we've made all this progress. Our next generation is like, well, what's the point? And I think when we think about community violence, we think about a lot of things. Like, we have to really remember, like, what do you think the Black Panther Party did? They was coming in to bring us together and feed us. Like, we have been here before, as you said. This is not new. And this is why we need to understand our history. And this is why we need to realize that you think that you're doing something that's so new and no one's done it before. Baby, yeah, there are leaders and people that were before you that were saying the same thing you're saying now, got their butt beat, got kicked, like, this is not new. This is what I tell my clients. Idea about
Oh, come on, Jesus. Just when it's just
why
getting
these things
good.
were there. They right they why it came about. That's how policies get made, right? They get made because there was a problem and someone came with a solution. If you think there's a better solution, then we got to advocate for the better solution. Get your receipts and explain yourself. But don't completely throw away what our ancestors have done to get us into these colleges, to get us where we got platforms, schools, radio stations that we can, like, come on, people. I own a house. I bought a house at 26.
You better come on here. Coach, we
Right?
got a little bit of
Like that was wildest dreams. Like that was somebody in my gene pool's wildest dreams to that a woman or somebody in my line, my generation would be able to do this.
Coach, we got a little bit of a tech issue again. We can hear you perfectly, but you kind of froze. The picture's not that bad. It's just in a moment of passion. So you did the Zoom thing, but we're good. But what I will do is I want to invite you back to maybe check in again between maybe Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I'll let you on that episode set what the topic is and what you're observing and what it is that you think that we should discuss. But I really want to thank you because I've been doing my best to hold down, not clinically, but addressing mental health and whatnot. And I'm not a clinician, no way near. And so I'm glad that for the past 2 weeks, we've able to have a full bona fide LICSW like clinician, a cultured clinician in here. That I know you bet on yourself and bet on self and whatnot is a part of your brand, but you better bet on yourself that you the cultured clinician because
I just love it.
I think that is so important. And we got the wonderful Bishop in the room.
Oh,
He's
I love.
inspiring the people, Coach.
Oh
Rob.
my goodness! Can I just say something about him real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Bishop. Oh man, he is such a factor in what you see. Like when you talk about becoming, he's part of my becoming. Like, when I got saved in Greater Love Tabernacle Church, and Bishop was one of the first people to tell me to lift my head up when I was feeling shame about being a single mom and going through domestic violence and just not really understanding why me. And he told me, and I was in tears. He was like, your testimony is going to come through all of this, and you're going to be able to help so many people and so many women. And I had no idea that I was going to be a therapist like that. And when he was saying it, I felt it, but now you feel something in your spirit that the person is not, they're telling you the truth, but you don't know what it's going to look like. But I tell you, man, like, what you see, with everything that I've gone through, this ain't where I'm supposed. This is not what you. This is. Thank God I don't look like what I've been through. The
Listen,
things that were supposed to take me out and make me really not know who I am, and to take my voice away. Like when I finished this book, that's a poetry book, and it's vignette. It's a memoir that I'm doing in the terms of poetry and vignettes. Like I came into this world in a struggle. Like they had to use the jaws of life to get me out that birth canal to come up into this world. So I came into this world in a struggle. Like my mom was 16 when she had me. They gave her 100 stitches because they couldn't get me out, right? That's an unprecedented amount of stitches to put in a young girl because of how they went about cutting her. Was what you call an episiotomy cut,
he's
which allows you to help the passage of the head. And, the doctor said to my mom, this is her report, this is what you get, 16, you shouldn't be having a baby at 16. And, no one will believe that happened to her, like who's going to believe a 16-year-old Black girl saying that about a Caucasian doctor making this comment, and just the things that went along with my birth and me coming into this world, and not to mention other things, I'm just thankful, and I have to celebrate my progress. And I'm saying that to everybody: celebrate your small wins and your progress, no matter how small it is. Celebrate it and allow yourself to have some joy about it, because that is what will reinforce you to keep going forward when things don't go your way. I'm going to say that again. Celebrate each one of your small wins and your moments of growth, because you need that to help you propel yourself forward when things don't go well and it doesn't go your way.
it is
And I think that's what we need right now. That's what we need right now, because things are not going our way. Let's just be frank. It's not going our way. There's also a lot of unpredictable things that we don't know what's coming. But remember,
and
you've been here before.
we've been here before, and not the majority, but you can't talk the Black community without talking beliefs, and a large majority is in a Christian, the Black church faith, and we both are,
Yes.
people of faith. And for those that tap into that I'm stuttering. That is one area that, with all this clinical and all this stuff, that mixed with, because if you pray, move your feet. So, Coach, we're going to get ready.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I last thing for
Yes.
all of my Christians and all of my believers, and I'm not sitting here as somebody that goes to church every Sunday, because some of y'all go to church every Sunday and y'all still don't have no faith and still don't believe, right? So I'm not, you go every Sunday and you're still worried, right? You go every Sunday, you praise every Sunday, and you still don't believe, and you are still worried, right? But if you really, really are a Christian, you really understand it ain't none of this in your control, right? You can only do so much, right? So some of it is you pray and you do what you can, right? And what's that saying go? I've done all I can, so now I'm just gonna stand. Like when you've done everything
All
you
that you
can
can stand.
do, you just gotta stand, and sometimes then you gotta do peace be still, right? And you gotta know that you put in all your effort and everything, and you pray on it, but you don't just pray and do nothing. But if you've done everything you can, you made every phone call, you filled out every application, you're doing all that you can. Every day you get up and you look for a job, you put your suit on, you put your best foot forward, right? And you are just every day. This is where you got to have belief, and you got to put the prayer in it too. Not just pray and do nothing and expect something to come out the sky and just come and save you. But I believe in my life, when I've done everything I can and I felt like things were not going my way, and I go, you know what, Lord? I've done everything that I can do. I'm tired. I don't know what else I can do, and I surrender all. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I'm going to be okay either way. I still trust you, and I still believe in you. And I'm telling you, I've done this faithfully. It's like everything shifts. The mountain shifts. The world just opens up. So I'm just speaking from my experience.
Mine too.
but it's been after I've done everything I can. Like I put in my best effort and I've had to surrender all. I've had to really just say, you know what? Be this not maybe this is not for me, Lord. Okay. Maybe you're telling me that this isn't the way you want me to go. And if that's the case, give me a sign and I accept it and and help me know which direction I should go instead. Because clearly what I'm doing ain't working. It ain't coming together the way I thought.
Now that is one shared testimony that we have. I'm like, okay, God, I done tried it. But no, coach, I know we veered a little bit, but there are a lot, I got a whole mother's board in here, and there are a lot of people that share our faith with us. So I wanted to allow you to speak to that as well, along with the clinical piece of, and Ayanna Presley quotes the African proverb a lot of times, when you pray, move your feet. You know what I mean? And so you got to give, basically what you said, you got to give God something to work with. You know what I mean? There's miracles, but give him a little something to work with. Folks, we're going to get ready to wrap up. Coach Law will be back with us within the next month or so, before Christmas. But Coach, I just want to thank you and appreciate you. I owe you lunch for coming in for these couple of weeks. I can't afford to pay your, hourly rate that you would charge in a group session, but well, maybe, but depending on where we go, it might be close. Because Coach is a foodie as well. But no, sis, I appreciate you, and you be encouraged, because I even saw today where we got to see, with all due respect, Lakeisha, in that, you let your hair down, and just shared with us. So thank you, and you will be back. Your closing remarks, ma'am.
Sometimes your biggest opportunities come disguised as bad news. People have created whole organizations, businesses, and movements in times like these. Write it down. Allow your creativity and your imagination and your place of figuring things out to shine through, because that's how you change the world. If you think about all of the different movements have come when people felt like their back was up against the wall and they didn't have anything else, and they create some amazing things. So I can't wait to see what we do as a community. I can't wait to see the leaders and the things that are going to come up out of this moment in time. And I pray that, I am still living to see just what this world is going to do. And that's the influence that I'm placing in the world. Resiliency and optimism changes lives, AKA go rock your life, baby, and bet on yourself.
Says the cultured counselor, the culture clinician.
As they say, clock that T, clock that T.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll follow up, and we'll set the date. All right.
Okay. Y'all all have a blessed week. And, like I said, if I can be of service to anyone, don't hesitate to reach out. And I don't call myself your favorite around the way therapist for no reason.
Nah, you walking away with that culture clinician title today. Thank you so much, Coach, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Y'all have a great day.
I hope you all got something out of not only today's session, but last week's session as well. And really, just a couple of things to review. And I wanted to do this before she left, but for those of you that are joining, we were talking with Coach Law about the difference between holiday blues and depression. And we talked about, you can do an assessment for yourself. If you know that your behavior is changing, you're sleeping a lot more, that 50 bag that used to get you through, a week, now you smoking that in 3 days. That pint that used to last for 2 weeks is gone in 4 days, that type of thing. Your dark chocolate and your gummy intake is picked up high. Pay attention to things like that. And if you find yourself generally within a 2-week period of not being okay, that's when you may want to consider reaching out to a professional or talking to someone. If at any point along the line that you are feeling that you just must talk to somebody and feel like you have nobody else to talk to and need confidence, also keep in mind that you can always call 988. They are there to listen and support and help. An additional thing, and this is a struggle for a lot of us, is understanding the difference between emotions and feelings. Emotions are real, and then we have to sometimes sit with the emotion and then process through How do we feel about that emotion? What got us there? And then how we're going to handle it. They are not synonymous. They are not one and the same. There's an emotion and then there's the feeling. And so we'll talk more about that as we go on with Coach Law and bring some other clinicians into the space. And then one of the things is Coach Law had a background in financial services and in business administration. One of the things that we can do proactively to address our mental health and keep us from being stressed out, depressed, and with anxiety during these very interesting financial times is look in your cupboard. And it's so funny because in our culture, we've always grown up, grandma's houses and auntie's houses. They've always had what? The deep freezer. Stuff would be in there that you would forget about. So do an assessment of what you have in your cabinet. Now, this is a good time to check the dates on your cans and your non-perishable goods. What resources are there? As a side note, I've been saying for the past few weeks that when you go out and shop now, we have 31 days until Thanksgiving. When you go out and shop over the next, in this case, week or so for those that are limited to SNAP benefits, pick up, a couple of extra cans of let me say this too. I'm not going to say that. Pick up a couple of extra things that can lead to Thanksgiving. The other thing that I wanted to say is as we're talking about, look at our resources and canned goods and whatnot. I'm going to bring a nutritionist and maybe Nia and some other folks in to really talk about our culture and what we do. And we can listen. Let me tell y'all, I can stretch a pack of hamburger. I can stretch some chicken wings. I can stretch sausage from spaghetti to with beans to for breakfast to a sandwich to. So we go out to restaurants and we go and do all this wonderful stuff. We might need to take it back to the basics. The thing I wanted to say is with canned goods and a lot of these pre-made meals and you just throw in the hamburger and things like that, they are high in sodium. So another thing we have to keep in mind during this time is also that we do our best to eat the most nutritious way that we can. Okay? Keeping that in mind as well. And the last thing I'll say is on that budget piece, what she was saying is, what is it that we're willing to give up? What subscription that you don't watch that app anymore? What there's an assessment that we may need to do, right? And the final thing was, and I'm glad that we talked about this, we have to remember that despite all that's going on, we as a people, we have been here before through turmoil and slavery and being bought over here. And it's not taking away, as Lakeisha said, from what our ancestors been through. And also, we have to understand that despite all that we've been through, that with everything else in our DNA is the joy, is the songs, is the storytelling, is the art, is the creativity, is the sending seeds over in the braided hair, is the messages that were sang in the field as gospel songs, really messaging about escapes. There's a rich, deep cultural history within us. Though it's trying to be erased presently, it can't. It's in our DNA. And we just have to be mindful of it and tap into it. This is a time as people are getting concerned and prepared, and the balance of not having all gloom and doom. But one of the ways that you increase your Black joy for most of us in most cases is through your family. And we know for some of our families, there's some real valid trauma. Then there's a joke and there's some trauma, when we deal with our families. But in all seriousness, this is a time of family and community. So with all of that being said, thank you all for being here today. We will be back with you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And I believe that's it for me today. It is 10:58. I am going to hold on for a few minutes so our Union Capital members can get their 90 minutes at 11:01. Charlotte James is in the building. I've seen what some folks will accept this food just to make it through the week. We have to take care of those who are in the greatest need and may not be willing to say it. Thank you, Charlotte. Coach said that as well. That skates along the piece of pride. Also, people can do a joint Thanksgiving with maybe a family member so you can share in providing the food. Not just one person or family has to provide. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Dina. Dina also said sometimes people don't have enough even now to pick up things towards Thanksgiving and need to worry about here and now. And so, Dina, that was kind of what I was going to say earlier, and I wanted to say it in a manner that wasn't offensive. Focus on, I know if you're a head of household and you have children and a family, you want them to have that Thanksgiving meal. That's our tradition, that's conditioning. But to Dina's point, focus on and do what it is that you believe. If it, can I just be real? I am really struggling as I'm sitting here and having this conversation with y'all. Who would have ever? So we're going to do what it is that we can do. Someone big is Shorty on Instagram mentioned that. Now I know we talked about sodium and salt intake, but she brought up an idea. Halloween is coming up. Maybe instead of giving away a whole bunch of the candy, put some, she said noodles. Put some noodles, or mac and cheese cups. As I said a few minutes ago, a couple of seconds ago, I'm in real time. Just my brain is processing what I'm saying and asserting. And so while we have to be real, we have to also be intentionally actionable. And so where was the last point I was getting ready to make? Oh, the point that Dina was making around some people may not even make it, may not have enough resources to buy food, fresh food, until Thanksgiving. So there's a few things that we will be keeping you up to date about. One is that on November 15th, the Worrell brothers, with a lot of support, will be doing their annual turkey drive. There's a schedule out that's happening on November 14th. There's another group that is doing giving away bags on Sundays from 12:30 to 1:30. I will post these flyers thanks to Donna Jenke Williams, who is posting this, and I've asked her to help keep me up to date with efforts for those that are coming together to support our community with this pending impact of SNAP benefits. Yeah. We're going to get ready to wrap up. It is 11:02. So our Union Capital members, you all have your 90 minutes for today. Teresa Minus mentioned a good point. For those of you that have the resources and are able, adopt a family for Thanksgiving if you can. That may be a gift card. That may be sending, the goods for them to cook. If there's a family that you may want to adopt, I'm going to go ahead and do this right now. You all know how we do in a Java Cafe. But Miss Teresa and Ma, I'm going to ask y'all to just stay in touch with Nicole. But she mentioned a few minutes ago that, she is impacted by the SNAP benefits. So Miss Teresa and Ma, if we could figure out how we can throw some resources toward that as well. So Nicole, we will make sure that you have what you need to have for Thanksgiving on behalf of the Java Cafe. Okay. And so, Teresa and Ma, if you all can inbox Nicole, I probably did. If you could hit Nicole and find out Find out what it is that she prefers and needs. Nicole, we do Jiffy, we do Bells, we do Butterball if they have it, but just get with Miss Teresa, and we'll figure it out. All right. That is it for us this morning. We will see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Have a great day, everybody, and we